Lights, an integral part of cinematic storytelling, a principle that has started being applied to some of our favourite D&D actual plays like Dimension 20 and Critical Role, not just to convey atmosphere to the viewer, but to set the mood for the players at those tables. But these shows are high-value productions, not simple home games. Surely these set pieces that they use to tell their stories on screen are unattainable for the rest of us, right? Regardless, I want that for my games, so let's make some lights, shall we? This project came about because in a few months, my partner and I will be moving out of our small apartment, hopefully into a place with a little more space. Enough space perhaps for a dedicated TTRPG room. And after almost 5 years of playing D&D, I want that room to feel special. I want it to have all the bells and whistles of a dream games room, and for my group, that dream has always included lighting. But I don't just want LED strips under shelves or colour-changing bulbs in the ceiling. I wanted something that fit a D&D inspired room, something with character. So, taking a cue from Critical Role, I decided lamps. Lamps can be more than just lighting, they can be part of the set, props that belong in the world we're imagining. Naturally, I started scouring the internet for 3D printable lantern designs. Some were designed specifically as lamps, others were just decorative props that I figured I could hollow out, and I did find several that I liked, but none that I really loved. One lantern was almost perfect, but I worried it wouldn't scale well. Too chunky and ultimately too closed off for the light to really shine through at the scale I would want. Another, a D12 inspired dodecahedron lamp, definitely fits the D&D theme, had good detail and would shine plenty of light, but it felt a little too on the nose. Cool, but gimmicky. So, after a few days of searching, having run out of options, I had a choice. Settle for good enough, or grab a pencil and start designing. And there it was, the perfect design. Simple enough to create myself, interesting enough to stand out on a shelf, and with just the right amount of fantasy flair. Of course, there is still one minor problem with my lights, in that, well, we have no light. Only now, after spending hours designing the perfect lantern, did I think about the actual lighting. That is something that I will need to find elsewhere. Because while it is a powerful tool, 3D printing can't make me a light bulb. Even so, I needed something simple. I'm no electrician, just an artist with a printer, but I had some ideas. I wanted these lights to be able to be controlled via the Stream Deck app, which I can easily set up at my D&D table. This is something I already managed to rig up for my current living room lights, so I'll stick with the same brand of bulbs for this project. However, I did have to jump through a number of hoops to be able to control these lights outside of their official app. So if you're going to try this, perhaps stick to some bulbs that have an official Elgato plugin, perhaps something like a Philips Hue. For powering these, I really did not want to mess around with fancy tech, soldering wires, or pulling apart existing devices. So after some digging around, I settled on a fittingly named lamp kit, which is exactly what I need. A plug on one end, socket on the other, and a switch somewhere in between. It's simple, nothing fancy, but I reckon it'll do the job. I will be making these files available to download over on MakerWorld, in case you want to try printing them for yourself. And I have been sure to alter them slightly so that you can set a custom size for your socket and cable holes in the slicer. I'll be sure to include links to everything that I personally used as well as those original files as well. So if you want to have a go at printing one or two of these up, either as functional lanterns or even just decoration pieces, the links to that MakerWorld page will be down below. And while these parts finish up printing, now seems like a good time to mention that if you're into 3D printing for the tabletop hobby, perhaps consider checking out the Painted for Combat Patreon, where you can jump into our community Discord, grab my printer profiles and other tools. At the STL tiers, you'll get access to a welcome bundle of tabletop-themed STLs, and each month we have a set of FDM-friendly bases for your tabletop miniatures, like this month's release, the Sundered City. A set of setting-agnostic urban bases that will be perfect for any sci-fi, grimdark, or fantasy models. All of them print up completely support-free, and where possible have been sculpted with flat top faces to minimize visible layer lines. So, whether you're looking for a tabletop-oriented FDM printing community, or want to get your hands on those awesome STLs, head on over to the Patreon with the links below. A huge thank you to everyone over there supporting the channel. Alright, back to our lights. As always, there were a few revisions during printing. Things are rarely perfect the first try. The diffusion inserts were a tad too big the first time around, and the bases had an overhang that I thought would print okay, but definitely did not. But after some resizing and splitting the models where needed, everything was super easy to print. Originally, I had thought of purchasing a roll of semi-translucent filament for this project, but figured I would at least try out the white PLA I had floating around, and frankly, it looks like it will do a really great job at spreading the light. So now, with everything printed up, it's time for a test fit. Not even painted yet, and I love them. They're gonna look so good. Alright, let's get to painting. As for paint, these need to stay simple. Eventually, sitting on a shelf with other D&D adjacent props, books, and miniatures, I don't want these to draw too much attention. I want them to simply be lamps that can add atmosphere to that environment. And once these end up on camera for Roll for Adventure, my group's D&D channel, a simple paint job will ensure that they don't become a mess of colours confusing an already busy background. So, after a coat of black primer, I went for a very simple once-over with some dry brushing. Originally, I had thought of airbrushing the entire pieces in a gleaming bronze metallic, but a matte black with some hints of metallic paint will catch the light in more interesting ways. A brassy mix of bronze and gunmetal with a few small highlights with a neutral brass were all these lights needed to absolutely shine. So why don't we put these together and take a look at our lamps all finished up. So there we have it, all finished up, and honestly, I could not be happier with the result. Incredible looking lights that I'll be able to change the colour of on the fly while we're playing games like D&D. And even when they're not turned on, they'll still fit into that space. Nice looking props that can sit on a shelf and add to that fantasy vibe, even when they're not turned on. Let me know down below how you think I did, and what you might do differently for a project like this if you were to try it yourself. Once again, be sure to check out the files for these lanterns down below, along with all the equipment that I used, and don't forget to check out the Patreon if you're interested in those STLs over there. Like if you liked, subscribe to stay up to date with all of my FDM printing and tabletop projects, but most importantly, thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a good one.